My sister was extraordinary.
Okay. What decade did you spend most of your childhood in?
I think the teenage years would have been most memory.
What decade was that in?
Probably the 30s.
Where did you live and what was your home life like?
Well, we lived in Brooklyn, and the neighborhood was mostly Jewish, and the home life was pretty much similar to what June had told me about hers. Education was very important to the family, and my mother was left as a youngster in Europe. The rest of the family, sisters and brothers, had migrated to America, and they left her behind. An elderly aunt was going to look after her, but the woman died within a year. So she was left in the street, so sad. And some very nice person took her from the street and raised her as a child. And finally, when the family got enough money together, they sent for her. And this was during the war years, the World War I years. And she was allowed to go to school, and I think she managed to get 1 week of school. And that was all that they either could afford, or that they forced her to find a job and bring home whatever money she made. So, in her way of looking at life, she always felt that education was essential. And to quote her, without it, you are lost. And so she spent most of her life encouraging my brother and I to do as well as we could do in school. And the result of that was two medical educations, and I became a dentist.
What was your earliest memory of what you wanted to be as an adult? Did you want to be a dentist?
Second,
What was your earliest memory of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
like all youngsters, we were imbued with the classics. At that time, television was not known, or very little of it was available, so that we didn't have the TV shows
What do you,
that used
Larry,
to today.
that's not the question.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
When you were a little boy, what
Did you want to be a dentist when you were a little boy?
It was kind of early to make up my mind as to exactly what I would end up with. But the usual things were the action professions, lawyers, doctors, and these are the things that we were named, or these were made the goals.
What were some positive memories of your childhood, and what were some negative memories?
What were the positive memories of your childhood? What was good about your childhood?
Outside of focusing really heavily on school, we also talked about which college we would go to. And therein was the choice once we decided to go to college, we had a name, something important to us. And dentistry kept coming up. It was either myself was questioning law or dentistry. And one reason or another, dentistry seemed to win out. What else was there? With the war going on, everyone's eye was on the war itself. And we all felt that we would be involved. And as a matter of fact, I had one uncle who was the family financed a trip to South America, and he and his wife settled in South America. And his wife decided that she missed her family too much, and she wanted very badly to go back to Europe, which they eventually went back to with the family in Europe, and that was the end of that branch of the family.
They ended up in the
It
others.
was,
Not a good decision.
What what type of clothing did you wear? Or what type of clothing did you wear?
Well, when we first started college, it was usual collegiate outfits. And we wore jackets, shirt, tie, and we were dressed more formally. And then, of course, as the war went on, we became less formal and became more like eventual soldiers. And I joined up to the Air Force and what they call the Aviation Cadet Program, which kept me from actually going to Europe and taking part in real warfare. But my importance was to the program that I was joined in. And I remember taking the test for the program. And the report came back after the test. Only a few names were called, and mine was one. So I qualified for that particular aviation cadet program, which in a way was very good because, like I say, I didn't have any, there was no risk as far as life was concerned. And everything worked out.
What he's not telling you is, when he took that test for aviation cadet, in his pocket was his draft notes.
What is that?
Do you remember that, Larry?
What?
When you took the test for aviation cadet, you had your draft notice in your pocket.
Oh, that's right. At the beginning of the test, they said anybody who has a draft notice will raise their hand, something like that. And or if it's delivered when you get home, you want to know about that. Well, as it happened, I had my draft notice in my pocket, but I had to sign a paper saying that I had my draft notice. So I couldn't lie about that. And so I was admitted to the program, which was a lucky thing for me.
He scored so well. Your grandfather was very, very, very smart. And he scored so highly that the woman said to get back in the program. she was, I guess,
She said you were so smart that you scored well, and so you didn't have to. You could be in the
Right.
program even though you got
Well,
your
it turned out
draft.
it ended all in my favor. And the war ended before my program ended, just a little bit closer. So I never had to actually take part in any warfare, so to speak. And it couldn't have worked out better.
What type of things did you do for fun with your friends? What did you do for fun with your friends when you were a kid?
Well, while I was at college, I was one of the youngest people there. We got out of high school very early, my mother and I. And our social life was around fraternity, sorority, that sort of thing, while we were at school. So that there was a good deal of socializing at school.
What type of things did you do?
Well, the fraternities and sororities managed to have social meetings. So we had dances and we had meal privileges at either fraternity or sorority for guests. And the rules of the campus were very strict about women and men. The
opposite sex.
they weren't allowed,
Keep them away.
women were not allowed above the first floor of a fraternity house. And of course, men, of course, were subject to the rules as well. But by and large, we made a good thing of it.
Did you ever violate those rules?
Anyway,
Did you ever violate those rules?
Did you ever not obey that rule? I bet you
Did you ever sneak upstairs?
I bet you did, knowing it.
what was that?
Did you ever sneak? What'd you say? Boys couldn't be above the first floor?
Yeah.
Did you ever sneak up to the second floor, the third floor, the fourth
No.
floor?
No, that would be endangering your enrollment at school.
So you never did. Did you know anyone that did?
I don't think I knew of anybody that did. I'm just, that's not like saying for sure, you know.
Yeah.
And there were probably people
Rules
who
weren't based.
That's it.
You were a rule follower. Okay, no problem. I just was curious.
What type of music did you listen to?
Pardon me?
What type of music did you like?
Well, people of that day, Frank Sinatra.
You loved Glenn
I
Miller.
still have some of his recordings here. And
Larry.
he was the big name.
You loved
The bands
Glenn
were
Miller.
big, like Glenn Miller. And
What's a famous Glenn Miller song that I might have heard of?
In the Mood was
In the Mood? I've heard
String of Pearls.
Yeah, I've heard.
And
Glenn Miller, too.
generally it was a foxtrot type setup. You know. We didn't have any dancing.
Gyration.
Who was the president or presidents? And who was the president when you were a kid? And what did you think about them?
Well, the president at that time was Franklin D. Roosevelt. And he was the, how should we put, he was probably the only president we really knew, in the sense that everybody liked him. Not like today where we have such doubts, you know, about who's to do what. So, as far as that goes, the politics of that time were strictly a Roosevelt. And there was a big war effort, you know. People had to cards for getting gasoline for the car, how much meat you could buy. And
FDR was an Annie, right? He was played by that girl. Maybe not sure.
You know, there was rationing in those days.
what's that?
There was rationing.
Rationing, yeah. Food
And
rationing.
my father's
gas
business was killed during the
rationing.
war.
They had coupons that they allowed you for various things, you know.
So he had to go back.
Even for shoes, for example. You're only allowed to buy so many shoes. And it was a different thing altogether. One of the fellows I went to school with, his father was the chief of the millinery union, which means he was a politician. When you become a union head, they need your vote, you know. And he represented a lot of people. My father employed people from that union. He was a manufacturer of ladies' hats. So, ladies, so I remember one of his employees once threatened him, my father that is, for some reason or other. He just made an idle threat. I happened to be telling this very good friend of mine about what happened in my father's shop. Well, little that I didn't think anything would come of it, but he had told his father, and his father made a big thing of it. And they called this guy up, and they sat him down in a chair where he'd be the focus. And they let him have it real good about how we run things here, how we do the union thing, you know, and what it means to people who belong to the union. And Shorty gave a real good talking to. I don't know if the guy ever straightened out of it, but he must have, because nothing ever happened.
Are there any major?
And my friend told me, rather not my friend, but people in the union who went to this hearing came back with a story that you couldn't believe. How they took this guy over hurdles and made him understand what being a union member meant. It wasn't just a question of belonging to a gang that you can call on anytime you need help, you know. Nothing like that at all. The unions were new at that time, and they wanted to make a pretty good showing that matter too. So that this was the time for them to really score big. They did. At the beginning, when they first organized unions, my father being an employee.
She doesn't need to hear about all the unions. She's got to get to her next.
Yeah.
She's got to write this up tonight.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I can probably do some of it
Some of it tomorrow.
Are there any major life lessons that you learned as a kid that still impact you?
Well, respect for the law was unquestionable. The policemen you met on the beat, you know, you try to be friendly, and you were, and you never had any reason to run into any kind of legal procedure. And the people had a lot of respect for others who...
Very different from today.
because we did anything illegal, my parents would have died on the spot.
But I think, like, our kids, you know, my friends' kids, you know, we all have respect for policemen. But other segments of the population do not.
But you know, from where, I think probably Larry had the same experience.
Anyway, did I
My
answer any of your
parents-
questions?
Yeah.
Accepted people as they came. Like my father hired a, she would be called an African American today.
You looked up
As a
the
secretary.
teachers.
Yeah.
And the principal of the
We,
school,
and we became very friendly.
and had special places in your
And
mind.
Lena said,
You
None
didn't,
of
you
her
didn't want
other
to get in
friends
wrong with anybody.
had her
And so
opportunity
you always did what you had to
that
do
my father
without
gave her.
question about it.
Because you didn't
The rules were there and you had
look
to.
at anything but your qualifications in his mind. He's a nice person in many ways.
Is that the last
Are
question?
there any
Yeah, well,
questions?
thank you for answering